Hello and welcome to this guide to the EDUQAS English Language Paper 1 Section A, Question 2. Question 2 asks, what impression? What is an impression? An impression means an idea, feeling or opinion about something or someone. This is how the question would look on the exam paper. As normal, I have a certain number of lines you need to look at, and then what impression does the writer create about a character or situation. As you can see there, it's got a bullet point underneath to guide you, saying that it wants subject terminology and you must use language or quotes in your answer. Here is an example then from the exam paper, one of the recent mocks. Read lines 1 to 17. What impression does the writer create of Francis in lines 1 to 17? You must refer to the language used in the text to support your answer, using relevant subject terminology where appropriate. The parts in red are the key things you'd want to look out for on the exam paper then. The examiner makes clear which part of the text you should look at and repeats the information. Any information outside these lines does not count. The examiner wants you to tell them what you can guess about the character or characters based on the quotes they give you. They want you to say what you can guess about the character based on the evidence. A reference to the writer means they want you to talk about why the writer wrote it in a particular way. What does the writer want you to think about a character or feel about a character? As you can see, language here links to the idea of using quotes or evidence. Relevant subject terminology is a reference to nouns, verbs, similes, speech or adjectives, anything you happen to find in the extract itself. And the number 5 in brackets suggests how many quotes you should probably aim for to get all 5 marks. As a general rule, you want to write your answers in short PEE paragraphs that link to the question and make clear what a quote suggests about a character. Key advice, be careful to make sure explanations fit the exact words of the quotes you choose. Here's an example then. What impression do you get of Kevin from this extract? As you can see, it's quite a short extract. Question 2 will not give you too much to read. And as you can see, in this case, we've got Kevin making his way up some steps to what seems to be a dangerous situation. The steps were damp and slippery around the darkness, and the darkness was intense. Could he remember what floor he was on? A rhetorical question there used, or at least a question used there, to show then that he might be scared or uneasy. The rebels raced up the steps behind him 2 at a time, eager to know the secret, not to help Glory. Kevin didn't care, they were here. The fact that Kevin says he doesn't care shows that he's not afraid or not scared by this situation. And indeed perhaps might even indicate that he's quite eager for events to unfold. One more floor, would he ever reach it? Well, Kevin at this point is wondering what will happen and whether the situation will ever end. Maybe he was wrong, suggests Kevin is in doubt or unsure what's happening. And then we've got with this last rhetorical question again, surely he wouldn't risk her life on the walk of death. This suggests then that he might be a little bit apprehensive about what Salem had in store for Glory. You get the idea that I'm looking through there, pointing out quotes or naming quotes and linking that to how Kevin feels. The criteria for this question is as follows. It's only out of 5 and you'd need about 3 marks or so to pass. Once again, you'd notice you've got 3 marks then for those who give impressions of the character and use a range of evidence and language choice to support their answers. These responses may identify relevant subject terminology where appropriate. Okay, so you can see here this question is simply based on evidence, explaining that evidence and linking that occasionally to subject terminology. 5 quotes, 5 links to Kevin perhaps, or the character, and that would give you the 5 marks you need from this question. Here's 3 examples then, based on the question you saw earlier about Frances and what we can tell about her. And this is the extract it's based on. Why does everything take so long, moaned Jonathan. It only takes me 5 minutes to get ready. Frances didn't bother to answer. She was sagging with the effort and boredom of assembling everything needed for the morning out in the car. Juice, beaker and screw-on lid, towels, change of clothes in case of car sickness, nappies, rattle. There was more. What was it? Oh, come on, Jonathan, think, she said. I'm fed up with having to plan it all. What do you think I've been doing for the last hour? He shouted. Who was it that changed Matthew's nappy just now, eh? Congratulations, she said. Don't shout or I'll cry. Why is everything always such a mess? Said Jonathan, picking up plastic spiders, dinosaurs, beads and bears, scowling grimly over the pile of primary colours. I want that spider, Daddy, screamed Lorna. Give it to me. During the ensuing struggle, Frances thought about her tiredness. The year following the arrival of her first baby had gone in pure astonishment at the loss of freedom, but the second time round it was spinning away in exhaustion. Matthew woke at 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. and Lorna at 6:30 a.m. During the days, fatigue had worn her down. Are we ready at last? Said Jonathan, breathing heavily. Are we ready to go? As you can see, there's two characters in this extract, and you've got to be careful you mention the right one. This extract has to be based on Frances, and you have to ignore the bit at the top there in italics. That was not part of the line count, so if you comment on anything in italics there, it would not get you a mark. Let's see what these students wrote. Candidate 1 scored 5 out of 5. You can see there we've got loads of quotes being used, 2 pieces of technical language, list and sarcastic tone there in blue. The response uses 5 pieces of evidence and analyses 2 of them. Clear insight is given at least 3 times, but it is a long response that would need to be written in 5 minutes. You only get 5 marks. So in places they have explained the quotes in quite a bit of detail, and the question would be, well, would they have time to do that in the test without costing themselves marks later on? Candidate 2. The candidate uses a point, then a quote with no explanation. The points are accurate to the quote, however. So we've got there some quotes being used, 1, 2, 3, 4 in total, but the candidate seems to make a point then use a quote. So this is a risky strategy, because if one of those quotes is a bit too vague, they quickly use marks. You can see one piece of technical language has been used there, the word list, and that's absolutely fine. This student obviously looked there and noticed there was a list and just made sure they used that as one of their quotes. Okay, candidate 3. In this case, 1 out of 5. The candidate clearly understood the text and character, but no quotes or subject terminology has been used. To avoid this kind of mistake then, you ensure you read the helpful bullet points the examiner gives you under the question itself. The examiner gives you bullet points to guide your response, to remind you of what you're being assessed for. They scored 1 out of 5. They got 1 because they did understand the text. It's just they can't go any higher than that because there are no piece of evidence or no links to the language being used in the line count they were given. Every year then, the exam board give feedback to the schools that took the test, and this is last year's feedback. If the question asks about 2 characters rather than 1, ensure that both are spoken about. Responses to this question tend to be overlong, so candidates should be made aware that it's only worth 5 marks and should take between 5 and 10 minutes to actually write the response out in full. I've obviously marked this question a couple of times now, so this is what I've noticed about students' responses. I agree with the exam board. Even in mocks, students tend to write too much for a 5-mark question. The key technique is to create a quick response that uses the right number of quotes and that technique needs to be practiced and developed. You'll see an example in a minute of how to do that. This question isn't about technique spotting. Quick, easy ways should be remembered to tick that box. References to adjectives, short sentences, speech would be absolutely fine. So if you happen to notice a technique, by all means comment on it, but don't go hunting for similes or metaphors in the response, because you might find you're using up quite a bit of time on something that actually doesn't appear. Read the question carefully, check the character or characters being asked about, remembering to use quotes and 1 or 2 pieces of subject terminology. Based on that advice then, this is how my response would look. Notice the quotes are really short together. I found a couple of pieces of subject terminology, but these are quite easy fits in terms of what was said. and you can see a link to the writer there in green. I make a point about the character first to focus my response on the correct character being asked about. I've then used evidence and explanations in rapid succession. So I've tried to do a quote and then an explanation in around about a sentence before moving on to the next. I've got a brief reference here to the writer, which of course links to the question set. In this case, the writer wants us to feel sorry for her, etc., etc. So a very short response here, maybe no more than half a side at absolute most, with a quick grouping of 5 quotes and 5 explanations to get 5 marks. Based on that advice then, let's have a look at some practice questions for you to try at home, based on the example you just saw and the techniques we've spoken about. Example question 1 and example question 2. Thank you very much then for listening to this revision guide then to English Language Paper 1, Section A, Question 2. Good luck in the final exam.